Hello, my name is Sarah Atchison, and as the visual communication expert on the website review, I will be assessing the issues brought up by everyone during the think tank session. I will discuss the importance of utilizing appropriate visuals to communicate both cultural familiarity and perspective framing with our targeted audiences to create an emotional appeal that will persuade these potential patients into coming to our medical facilities in Denver, Miami, New York City, and Phoenix. We will begin by addressing Carol. First, we do not want to use the same image across various locations because each location is unique. We want to reach the people in that area. Using the same image in Miami of a young woman in a tank top and shorts receiving care with palm trees out the window may attract the young community in Miami, but the elderly or retirees in Denver may not feel the same way. Similarly, a family in Denver receiving care where you see snow and mountains out the window will not attract a young man down in Miami. We want to include something that is culturally familiar to our audience so they create an emotional engagement and want to come in because it looks and feels like home, something that is both familiar and safe to them. We could use this photo you see here in each location and just change a few things. For example, we could have the patient dressed in summer clothing for Miami and Phoenix while wearing a sweater in New York and Denver. We could have the blinds open and display a beach and palm trees out the window in Miami, sand dunes and cacti in Phoenix, snow and mountains in Denver, and a busy city skyline in New York. Just changing the patient's clothing and background will make the audience relate to what they see and create the emotional response we are after. As far as looking American enough, I think we need to avoid that concept, as America is a very diverse place, and what exactly does an American look like? Americans are of all colors, ages, sizes, and in various walks of life. So let's just try to appeal to everyone. Moving on to Daniel's family statement. In theory, this could provoke an emotional response if it were true. However, what if you place all photos of families with a mom and dad and children, but the person seeking care lost their family in a crash, or a person does not like kids, and that's all they see? This could cause a bad response, and they may avoid our facility. The list could go on, but we want to avoid these things because who are we to say what a family is or what it looks like? In the first image you see here, we see a mom and dad with 2 kids, but in the second picture, you see an elderly man receiving care. And maybe it was an only child who never had kids. Their spouse passed away. He has no family. In the third picture, you see a young man by himself who could be part of any situation. Because everyone doesn't see family the same way, we need to keep our perspective framing in mind and use this to welcome everyone. Next, we have Caleb. Let's think about his statement and ask ourselves, what do patients want to see? Most likely they want to see that they will be safe, taken care of, and that it will be easy to get in and get the care they need, but most of all, they want to get better. Images such as these will create an emotional engagement because the patient can relate to what is happening in those sort of pictures. It will all feel very familiar to them. When they're injured or sick, they are not looking to go to the hospital to play soccer. Therefore, fun outdoorsy pictures are not relevant to healthcare and will not persuade our patients to come in. Let's face it, they aren't coming to the hospital for a good time. They're coming because they are injured, ill, or in some sort of serious need of care. In this photo, you see a patient being cared for by 3 medical professionals, and it looks as though the doctor is explaining things to her and her husband, family member, or friend that is with her. This will give our patients a sense of security and assurance that they will receive the care they need. Moving along to Heather. We just discussed this quite a bit while going over Caleb's idea, but let's dive deeper. We need to use perspective framing and cultural familiarity to give these potential patients the things they likely want to see. For example, in this photo, we see a man being discharged from the hospital, and he is being wheeled out through a parade of medical staff celebrating his recovery. We also notice he is holding a sign stating 1000th COVID-19 patient being discharged, which tells us the hospital really cares for its patients. As a potential patient wanting the best care, quality staff, and to get better and go home, these are all things you want to see. This image gives you cultural familiarity of COVID, the masks, the fear, getting better, and COVID or no COVID, getting better and going home is the ultimate goal. It gives you the best perspective because it projects that you will get better, you will be cared for, you will be cheered on by your medical team, and they will invest in you. Last but not least, we have Samuel. I think we've answered his question previously, but let's look at this image of the man recovering from COVID. Many thought this was just about impossible last year, so this picture gives people hope, or a miracle, you might say. Now looking at the first image in this slide, we see a man with two professionals being moved in a Hoyer lift. In the second photo, we see a patient going in for an MRI. These photos show top-of-the-line equipment, friendly staff, and safe environments, which will create culture of familiarity, but also give the great perspective as they appear to be great staff, great equipment, and that they will provide great care. Now, what if the women were just pulling this man out of bed and putting him into a chair? Or if the MRI was done in a dark, dirty room and the employee looked angry or mean? These photos would not seem so appealing now, right? We need to choose images that can create cultural familiarity to our audience. This means adjusting clothing and backgrounds to match appropriate location, using diversity in people, and not stereotyping what a family is or what it looks like, and not excluding anyone. In a journal by Tony Craig, Anna Conniff, and Carlos Galen Diaz, they said people gain actual familiarity through direct experience of environments, but environments we have never visited can still seem familiar. Therefore, we can create that familiar feeling by using places such as Denver, New York, Miami, and Phoenix, and the clothing based on weather, the types of people, the desire to be treated and get better to create familiar environment. And even though they haven't been to the hospital, it will seem familiar, along with their goal of getting better. Similarly, when seeking an emotional response, we need to think about what our audience is looking for and how we can reach them, which is why we use cultural familiarity paired with perspective framing to give the familiar feel from the perspective they want. The Content Marketing Institute says, as content creators, how do we walk the line between good emotional engagement and audience manipulation? It takes empathy, continuous refinement, and above all, a relevant story. This quote tells us why we can't use fun, outdoorsy pictures that aren't relevant, why we can't use families, we have to have empathy, and why we can't use pictures that we have now. We need to provide continuous refinement.